welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We always welcome your questions and comments. Email us, dj@artistfirst.com. Here they are, your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man, and it is Michael and Margaret Lyons.
We're here.
And I am short on sleep and low on blood sugar, so this is going to be a great show.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will. But I'm going to remain steadfast.
That's right.
Or something. But that's what we're talking about tonight, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a topic, steadfastness. This is a topic that I guess you were writing a little, I wouldn't call it, not really an essay, but kind of a notes to yourself about. And then you mentioned it to me the other day, and it sounded like an interesting thing to talk about. So this is how we make these important show programming decisions. We just whatever we feel like talking about. No, it's much more complicated than that. There's a crack team of surveys that we don't do any of that stuff. Anyway, so yes, whatever we feel like talking about.
What strikes your heart?
What strikes your heart? And so steadfastness. And I think, we should, again, like we often do, we should probably define our terms, but I think steadfastness is probably a term that very few people are familiar with. The one they might be a similar term they might be more familiar with is faithfulness, but the two are different.
Right. It's more, what would be the word? A more familiar word nowadays. The stick-to-itiveness.
I don't think that's familiar, but go ahead. I mean, that's what we're talking about, really.
Right, but it's a more familiar term, I would think, or to be stubborn about something.
Stubborn, I'm sure people understand. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely sure people understand stubborn, but none of those are exactly correct. I think because steadfastness, and maybe it's being a little bit old-fashioned, but it has this quality of commitment to it. If you are steadfast, let's say you've taken a pledge, you've sworn an oath, you've committed yourself to something, and you're not going to break that commitment. And what holds you to that commitment is, in essence, your steadfastness, your unwillingness to yield despite perhaps great adversity. So if you say I'll do something, I'll commit to something, or I'll give myself to a particular task or a particular thing that may be, I wasn't exactly sure what that would entail. You say, well, I'm gonna do this thing, and from the point where you say I'm going to do this, or I'm going to commit myself to this, it's not known what the commitment might entail. In other words, you go into something perhaps thinking that it will be, a certain level of effort, and it turns into something which is far beyond. In other words, you had no idea of what you were going in, what you were committing to going in. Now, you might say, well, it would be very reasonable to say, well, I didn't understand. I didn't know. I wasn't prepared. I want to get out of my commitment. I want to say, well, I thought it would only cost $10, and now it's $10,000. And I just don't have that kind of money. I don't have that kind of resources. But the steadfast person, and our quote today is from somebody who is extremely steadfast, and we'll get back to that. But the steadfast person doesn't count the cost what they do is say, I committed to something. I'm going to see this through, whatever it is. And, in some ways, life is of course, that same sort of journey. You don't know what you're going to face, but a life lived steadfastly is one in where you hold to your commitment, whatever the commitment was.
Well, the word steadfast, fastness is the same root word as fastener. You are connected or attached.
Right.
Stead is like stand. So it's standing fast.
Right.
But the level of commitment to in steadfastness is more akin to, there's a tradition in, oh goodness, I can't remember which tribe it is. But what they would do is they would take their arrow, and no matter what the odds, they would plant it in the ground and say, here I stand unto death.
Right.
And that's the stand fastness that the word steadfast is referring to. You are so committed that your life, you will expend everything that you have to make this stand. And it's very interesting because I don't see that kind of interpretation, or to be able to hold fast to your commitments or even your vows.
Your principles.
Yeah. Because when they made the blood brother vow anywhere in the world, you cut your hands in the palm and you link hands together so your bloods mingle. That exchange of blood is basically saying you are of my blood. It's even almost sometimes it's even more so than your family blood. It is so close that you and I are, it's almost like twins. We shared blood together for life.
Yeah. I liked your earlier point, too. I mean, the idea that, well, I think people, when you say steadfast, I think you could relate it to that kind of a last stand. The tribe, whatever the tribe was, they're putting the arrow, it's putting your mark in the ground, say here but no farther. This is where I will make my last stand. But I think I would turn that not necessarily so, because steadfastness sounds like you are in a desperate situation. And I would say, yes, that's where you are going to be tested. But in truth, steadfastness is something that is also a moving thing. It is not. Exactly. It is not just that you've been brought to the extreme need and you must hold or you're going to die. Yes, that you can get there, but it can also be this very, I would say, almost plodding, progressive commitment. Somebody who does something, a task which may give them no reward, which seems endless, which has, it seems that all the things that I've done are completely ignored by everybody, and that no one sees. And then the thing rises up that maybe it's all useless, and maybe it doesn't matter. And why am I wasting my life, my breath, my time?
Yeah,
and yet steadfastness is you continue, right? Doubts. You continue. You say the job isn't done. I've put myself to this task, whatever it is. It reminds me. It calls to mind the task that we went through with Christopher, because we set ourselves at a point in the beginning of that to the task. Whatever the end would be, we had no clue what the end would be. But yet the task was the important part, and the steadfastness was holding to it despite all odds, despite all things that came in. But I think, if I may, and I'll put this to you, but I'll just give me one. Both those things are outside of everyone's experience. Very few people can relate to the last stand of a tribe at war. Very few people can relate to the commitment it takes to go through years of cancer treatment. But there's a steadfastness that we all have to look for, and that's, in essence, even in the littlest of things. The term, your word is your bond.
Mm-hmm. Well, the importance of what your word actually is. And it's been made very light in this society because, especially with all the different forms of media and social media, they've made it into a game where you have to find out whether or not something is true. It's a game to see if this video that they put up, do you think that's real? Or this picture, you suppose that's real? Or people say, "Oh, I've been here." And what's the phrase? If you have to take a picture of it to prove that you were actually there.
Pictures or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
and that's the mindset now, which is fascinating to me. It's like, so you're playing with your appearances and your illusion as opposed to going to the heart of truth.
Exactly. And also, I think the other side of that, also with the social media, is that steadfastness is a quality which is mocked, or at least it's treated as somebody who's perhaps a little slow or a little dull or a little foolish. The quality which is given fed it is this tremendous flexibility that whichever way the wind blows, that's the way you have to be, and you have to be ahead of the crowd and always leading the trend and always going in every.
Well, isn't that because they want to be trend makers?
I believe that's what people will say, but I'd say that most are really following because you can find within sometimes the space of the same day these same trend makers espousing two radically different and sometimes diametrically opposite opinions, because what's come of this tremendous sort of mentality, this mob mentality of if you don't agree with me, we're going to shame, bully, harass, whatever the point is, and you can pick your point. I'm not saying that anybody's point is right. I'm saying that the steadfastness of holding your point of view is immediately subject to a mob of whomever doesn't hold your point of view trying to take you down. And that's a hard thing to stand against, because you feel alone, and you also feel as though you're being exposed to a public, not just a private ridicule, but a public ridicule, that your reputation, your character, everything about you is being torn down by a pack, by a mob. And that amount of adversity is so difficult to stand against that if you don't have this quality of steadfastness, it's so much easier to just go with it. The storm is there, and how can I stand against the storm? I have to go with it. I have to allow myself to become part of the pack, to disappear into it, and then therefore almost become what I said I would never be, whatever that thing is.
Yes, that kind of pressure. But my question would be, what would bring you to the point of making a stand? Where is your limit? Where is your boundary? where you say no and no further?
That's a very good question. Because is there one? You know?
Oh, yes.
Well, no. I hear you, but I say that many people lose themselves so completely that I don't think they even know how far they'll go before they don't even recognize who they were to start with.
It has and that's the key, isn't it? It has a lot to do with your own perception of yourself, how you understand who you are.
Right.
Because most people, when it comes to somebody crossing them in their idea of who they are or devaluing who they are, they normally will make a stand if they believe in themselves or believe in the truth that's within them. When you believe that, nothing can move you. It doesn't matter what people come at you or what authority figure may be at you. You just stand there. It's like, no, it's wrong. And you may be bigger than me and you can probably hurt me, but you can't make me agree.
You're right, but that's, I think, a lot rarer. Let me say this. You have courage like that. I know you do because I've seen it. But I say it's a lot rarer than you think. In fact, maybe becoming rarer than either of us think anymore. So it's so. It used to be that maybe you had to stand up to a pack of bullies in the schoolyard, 5 or 6 people, and there were lots of that archetype has come through many stories over the years, right? But now you don't have to stand up just against a pack of bullies. You have to stand up with what appears to be the world. You know, when in this day and age, when your opinion is, this happens to people all the time. You've seen it in the news. A child will make an opinion, will share an opinion with a friend, and then that friend, who may not have ever been a friend, will end up posting that someplace where everyone else can see it. Look what Johnny said. And then it isn't just that Johnny's friends have a laugh at him. Now, people from other countries, this has turned into now something where it becomes a public world of shame coming down on this person, perhaps. And so you have to stand. If it's something that you really truly believe in, you are tested at suddenly the highest level.
I think that the concept of shame in this culture, in the Western world, they were always saying, no, nobody should be judging you. You shouldn't be doing. And then that whole mindset of, oh, no, free. This is a free society. You can say anything you want. And now that concept of shaming is being used against them. Like you can't be that free. Oh, you can be free here, but no, you can't be that free. You have to walk here.
Yes.
And the idea of shame, suddenly this is new for a lot of people in the West on what you're supposed to do, where's the lines of where I'm supposed to walk and how I'm supposed to walk, and am I actually going to do that? Because in the Eastern culture, you already know that you don't have an identity outside your family. There's no such thing as an individual. Here, they're saying, oh, we're all individuals, but we think this way. And when you're under the illusion, because that's an illusion, that's what all this has revealed. People are under the illusion that there is no shame in being an individual. But what they're doing is they're resurrecting that old thought pattern of shame to control you. And in the East, that's the baseline. They use shame all the time.
You're right, and I think that's the environment, and I think we should probably go back and have another show about that. But in this environment, the quality which is tested is your steadfastness. And I think, Margaret, that we were talking about this earlier, that the difference between the person who will be true and stay with what they believe regardless is that there has to be an internal commitment, an internal resonance that says this is true. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. And the person who is going to be tested and go with the wind and go with whatever the flow is, means that they don't have that internal.
No.
What they have is everything is based on the external. It's affirmation. It's if someone else says it's good, I'll do it. If you know what I mean? It doesn't have this. You don't. If you lack that core, you're never going to be able to stand. So steadfastness has that idea of a core.
Well, the reason I brought up the difference between the East and the West is the fact that there's a lot of people that have been under this in the East that have developed this internal.
Yes, in response almost.
Absolutely, because it's the human spirit is always free.
Right.
So they know how to have to fit in because that's the culture and the cultural norm. But they find within themselves the strength to hold who they are. And they themselves will go only so far. That's the difference. It's almost like what I'm trying to say is that when you see this happening in the West, on the media of any sort, the way that they're being manipulated by shame is very similar to what happens within a family group. You're supposed to toe the line. You're supposed to say this. This is what we say. And if you don't do it, they get so angry at you that they can become violent.
Well, you're right. I'm sorry, but so the environment is now become fractious and dangerous. And what you're saying, I believe, is that this culture is unprepared for it. And
Right.
in fact, I think the current where we are
Right.
now, people are much less prepared for two reasons. One, of course, is culturally this wasn't something. It was always express yourself. Your individual opinion is supposed to matter so much that no one else should be able to. You should be able to be whoever you want to be.
Right.
That's the culture.
Be who you want to be.
But let's say we draw ourselves back 100 years or so. There was also in that society, even though the individual was touted, there were also norms which said you have a certain belief and this is who you are, and you were taught that this is who you are, and that internal was a bolster. In other words, in giving people the idea that they could be whomever they wanted to be, but with no internal discipline, with no structure, they come out and say, this is who I want to be. And that's great if everyone else will stick to that. But then when somebody realizes that without any grounding, without any structure at their core, that public shame can be used to move the masses, that now whatever opinion we say you have to have, you will instantly be shamed or pushed into having it, because we can not just mock you on an individual basis, we can mock you with the whole world, So in this environment, in this culture, steadfastness has become rare. It's become almost something which, when it's expressed, immediately tries to get quashed. In other words, they say, if you're going to try and be steadfast, we'll just pile on the pressure even harder and even harder and even higher. We'll destroy you. And so people, without any core, without any rock solidness, get blown away. They get swept away. And now I just before we're coming up to the break, but I want to bring this in right now, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. The quote that we had for this episode is from a very famous person. You may have heard of him before. His name was Mahatma Gandhi, and Gandhi, of course, became famous and really world famous for what I would say was his steadfastness. The quote is this: "A man of faith will remain steadfast to the truth, even though the whole world might appear to be enveloped in falsehood."
Mm-hmm.
And Gandhi, who was a product of the last of really the 18th century,
right.
you know, and then coming into the 19th century is where he made his steadfast stand. He was of an oppressed people. Mm-hmm. He was of a people who were at the time under colonial rule.
Right.
He was he had made his peace with the dominant oppressive culture and had actually become educated in that culture. And then he came back to his roots and he realized that who he was at conflict with who he was being told to be. Mm-hmm. And that somewhere in his soul he realized that he wasn't who he was being told, that the world, the dominant culture, was telling him who he wanted to be. And he said he found his steadfastness. And then the whole world came against him with violence, with tremendous pressure. The more he was pressured, the more steadfast he became. And I think his statement is what gives us the clue. Truth. He found within himself the resonance of the heart, and the heart knows what's true.
Mm-hmm. A man of faith will remain steadfast to truth.
To truth.
Yes. Yes. His I'm trying to remember. Gandhi was he Hindu?
Yes.
Yes. He is known for nonviolence.
Exactly.
Protesting nonviolently. And that step was something that people of the world didn't understand. They thought that protest meant fighting and violence.
Mm.
But he's like, no, you don't need to do it that way. Even though they may, you still don't need to.
Right.
And actually, I think we're coming up on the break, are we not?
Steadfastly we are. Let me tell you what. We'll take Gandhi's thought into the break, and we'll talk about him on the other side a little bit more. But remain steadfast. We'll be back.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Deucalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Brag Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And I'm glad that you folks hung out through the break steadfastly.
Mm-hmm.
And you had faith that we'd be back. And we are back. But just at the end of the last half hour, we were talking about a very steadfast person, Mahatma Gandhi. And as you mentioned, Margaret, Gandhi led a protest for independence, and he led it in such a way that the world had not yet seen, and now it's almost a tenet of people who would protest for their freedom in a non-violent way. Mm-hmm. At that time, we're talking about the early part of the 20th century. Gandhi was an enigma. The people of India were oppressed. They were subjugated by the British at the time, and it was an arrangement which worked very well for the British and didn't work all that well for the native population. But there were certainly benefits even then on both sides. Yet this individual, knew that the truth of it was that his people needed to be free. And the thing is, how do you accomplish something like that? It seems a task beyond belief. How can I free a nation of hundreds of millions of people from the rule of another nation, which is incredibly powerful, which at that time the British Empire, the sun never set on the British Empire at that time. So his one revelatory truth was that people of India were what powered the colonial powers of India. In other words, the British had all the guns, they had all the ability to wage war, but what they didn't have, or what he could have that they couldn't keep, were the hearts and the minds of the people.
Right.
But to do that, to understand that is one thing, but to do it required tremendous steadfastness. In essence, he started a movement by saying that we will not do. You can't make us do. In other words, you can point a gun at somebody and say, do this. But Gandhi realized that you can't point a gun at 150, 200, 300, 500 million people and tell them to do this. If they just sit on their hands and don't do it, you can try to force them, but then you run out of people to oppress those who won't do. And so in essence, it was like the modern day concept of a sit down strike. We're just not going to do it. You can't make us.
Right.
And these same sorts of things have worked in other oppressive regimes. Gandhi was the model which helped many others throw off their oppression. The whole idea of the strikes that freed Poland, from the communist regimes, and many of the other Eastern Bloc nations, were that we aren't going to try and beat you with tanks and guns, because we don't have any of those things. All we have is the hearts and minds of the people, and the power that we continue to hold within ourselves is just that we steadfastly refuse to do what you want us to do. And yes, you can try to scare people into doing it. You can say, we're going to arrest everybody. Well, go right ahead. We're going to kill everybody. Well, go right ahead, because you're not going to get us to move. But it does take tremendous courage. For who? For the first ones.
Yes.
For the person, man or woman, to stand up and be first.
Yes. Yes. And the conviction's got to be there that I'm not going to continue this. I have made the decision that it stops here.
Yes.
And usually it's because it's for the sake of the next generation.
Yes.
And freedom. Oppression is, unfortunately, an easy thing to come across. Human nature. You just want to know. It has nothing to do with fairness. It's just, no, I feel like doing this. Just thinking of yourself. But it takes much, much more to be able to say, this goes against everything that I hold dear.
Well, you said it last half hour. I'll just repeat it. You said, at what point do you get to the place where you will not be moved any further? And it takes people a long, you oppress a people for long enough, but the human spirit, the core, the kernel of who you are, says no farther. You can't take everything from me. You've pushed me down to my root, to my core, and I found within myself something which is indestructible. This is, in essence, our eternal connection to the eternal. That is indestructible.
Yes. The spirit rises.
Yes.
And it's very fierce when it rises. Mind
Yes.
you. There is no fear when you hit that point. You've already considered. They've been using fear or shame to try to control you, and you throw all that out because it doesn't matter anymore. No further. Here. That's it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the repercussions are to me. I make my decision, and I stand here.
Right.
And everyone will know that I stand here, even if I die here.
Right.
It's a core, a heart-based truth. And you realize the fullness of who you are in that moment. You will not allow this to influence you any further. That's it.
I think there's something even more important there. You just said it. You reach a point where the truth matters more than your life. In other words, you now say that you've pushed me to the core. I am now one with the eternal, and you can kill me, but the truth exists beyond my individual corporeal existence. So once you reach that point, nothing matters, even up to and including your death, because you realize that what you have resonated with is beyond time. It's beyond corporeal existence.
Well, truth is that truth that you hit is immovable and unshakable and undeniable. It exists eternally.
Exactly.
So you look at that and then you look at this, what they're trying to do. It's like,
right.
That's just a blink of an eye. You want to take my life?
And when you express that, what you see in the eyes of the oppressor is a deep-seated fear.
Well, this is my point. You want to take my life? You cannot.
Right.
The body may not function anymore, but you cannot take my life. I do not give it to you.
Exactly.
That core truth is what makes you blaze up like a shining beacon.
Right. And that core truth is the heart of steadfastness.
Yes.
You see it in the cancer wards with these kids or whomever is facing it, because they realize, at some point they realize the core truth that no matter what happens to the body, I continue.
Yes.
And once you realize that core truth, you have found not only the heart of steadfastness, but truly the heart of eternity.
Yes.
And you can't be pushed any further. It's what it means when you put the arrow in the ground. It says, you can't push me any further because my life doesn't matter anymore. You may take me, you may take my body, but you can't have my truth.
Right. My life is more than the body's life.
Right.
And you may kill this body, but my life goes on. You cannot take it.
Can't take it.
And that understanding, that conviction, in that moment, your heart is so open and so wide that you realize you basically wind up laughing in the face of death.
Yes. Because you know the greater truth.
You are the greater truth.
Exactly. And we can also link it to Christ, because in essence, when the oppressive powers of his day said to him, we are going to try you, convict you, kill you, and thereby destroy you and your movement forever. All it did, because of the steadfastness, we can talk about it this way. The cross at the time was the worst death, not because it was so cruel and so horribly painful. It was a shameful death. It was the worst type of shame. It was supposed to expose you for the lowest of the low, the most shameful of the most shameful, criminals, the worst type, the people who were outcasts of the outcasts were put to the cross. That was what it meant. And saying that doesn't, you can do all that and take my life and I still exist and my truth is still pure, is what the transformation of shame is. When you transform shame through that truth, it shows the falseness of those who would use it. And
Yeah.
it shows the beauty of that truth.
Manipulation of shame,
Mm.
which is a power play. But your life, especially when it's given in great love and compassion,
Mm.
you reside in the heart, and that is your eternal point.
Right. And when you bring the oppressor to that point, they are afraid.
Oh, yes, because it's outside the span of what they know, their world. The world is all based on this control and shaming, and I'm on top, and they only feel good if they're on top, maybe for a few instances. But it has nothing to do with what truth lies in every single life that's down here.
Isn't that interesting? Oppression is temporal, corporeal control.
Yes.
But it fails immediately at the eternal, because the eternal is eternally free.
Yes.
The eternal
Spirit is always free.
The Spirit rejects all oppression. The Spirit rejects the lie that you can control all through the corporeal.
Right. But what I find fascinating is that the soul can be captured and held prisoner.
Yes.
Until the soul realizes it doesn't need this.
Right.
And I think that's where the fight goes on. The mind is set to capture pieces of the soul. But if the Spirit is alive within you, it will free your soul. But you must make the decision. Yes.
You're right, but I just want to, before, when you finish, if you wouldn't mind doing this, because every time that we bring this up, I think people get confused, the difference between body, soul, and spirit, because I think people confuse soul and spirit, and they're probably going like, what do you mean?
Oh, okay. Your soul is how you feel, how you think, and how you choose. Your spirit is your eternal spark. And when the spirit embodies itself, it comes into the body, your soul is the emanation of that. It's the experiences that are produced by this union.
Mm.
So when you understand that your eternal spark is your spirit, and you cannot destroy it. It is eternal.
Mm.
Your soul can also be eternal, but it has free will and can therefore be captured for a period of time and imprisoned by thoughts or actions, or the physical body imprisoned. But your soul doesn't need to be imprisoned, even though your physical body may be. So that's the difference between soul and spirit. Is that clear?
I believe so. Maybe I'll say this, that the soul connects the two. The corporeal interface is through the soul. Spirit doesn't connect directly to the flesh. Spirit connects through the soul to the flesh, and vice versa. The flesh can be, experiences of the flesh can be transported into spirit through a soul. The soul is the interface.
Yes, the interface.
Right.
Yeah.
So back to what we were saying, the steadfastness actually resides within the soul, and it's a connection back to spirit. When you get to that, when you connect your soul to spirit through your steadfastness, you have the realization of indestructibility. You have the realization of this is true, that
right.
No matter what you do to the body, if I decide that I am free, that my soul is indestructible, that it is connected to spirit, that it is one with the eternal truth, with the eternal freedoms, all that oppression, all the corporeal nonsense, all the shaming, all the whatever social media says, none of that matters. And then that commitment, that steadfastness becomes a beacon. Someone said not too long ago rather, that courage is contagious. That when you stand up, it feels like the whole world is against you. but yet you are seen. You don't think you're being seen. You think you're being shamed, mocked, destroyed, but you are seen. You might become as Gandhi became the leader of a great nation. You might become as Christ became the example for billions to follow in a particular faith, or as Buddha or any of them, but you have to be first. And when you are first, you feel incredibly, terribly alone. The only thing you have at that point is your steadfastness, your rock at your core.
Your connection to spirit. As you said, the soul, once it connects to spirit, produces that steadfastness. But you had said last hour that it's not necessarily this all-encompassing one episode. Steadfastness has to do with a constancy, and it is expressed in little things as well as large things. And when you constantly have made that connection and chosen the higher, always the higher, even if it hurts you, even if people are mocking you, it builds character.
Yep.
And when you're under that kind of pressure, the character within you strengthens and grows, and people look at you and you go, how are you doing that?
Right.
How is it that you're standing up like that? And it's because you've been tested and tried again and again and again, and you've come to build that internal structure within you that becomes pristine because you are holding to the truth that is within your heart. And when you're there, even if the odds are so completely against you, and you have come through the fire and created this pristine character within you, you present hope. You hold hope in hopeless situations.
Right.
No matter what, no matter how many times they tell you, this is not going to work. Your son's going to die. How can you keep holding on? It's like, oh, you've never been there, have you?
No.
And the character that has developed, because you've had people and incidences say this to you again and again and again, always bringing you to the worst case scenario, you get to a point in your heart where the truth of life, the fact that life is eternal, becomes the base of how you operate.
Right.
And what they're saying is ephemeral. Shadow play against the screen of a flickering flame. And you hold to the light because life is so much more than this shadow play that they're presenting in front of you.
So again, it is in a little. It's actually in the littlest things sometimes.
Yes.
And the little things add up to the big things. I mean, we often talk about Mother Teresa or all these great figures. They don't become great overnight.
No.
In fact, the years, decades, lifetime of steadfastness. And then all of a sudden people say, well, where did this incredible soul come from? It came from that. It came from day after day, moment after moment, after trial, and coming to the edge of giving up and saying, no, I'm going to continue.
Yes. Yes, because the question is, do you give up now?
Oh, over and over again. Over and over again. Are you ready to despair? Are you ready to despair? I'm going to take everything away from you. It's Job, right? It's every trial under the sun. And what is the great classical story? The devil says, I'm going to take everything away from him, and then he'll curse you. He'll curse you, God. Watch, I'll get him. So everything is done to this person. He's just an example of steadfastness, of it doesn't matter. Take everything away. Kill all my children. Leave me in suffering. Leave me in a hole, sitting in a pit in the middle of a desert. Nope, I'm not going to curse God. or no, I'm not going to give up, or no, I'm not going to despair.
He knew the truth of life.
Exactly.
He knew that life is eternal, and he held to it.
Yes.
He made his stand holding to the fact that life is eternal.
Right.
Even though you may not understand all the particulars and you have gone through sheer hell and the whole world has turned against you.
Right.
Still,
Everything, you've lost everything, right?
Still, you understand that truth within the core of you, suffering or no.
Now, I would say Job's story is a corporeal story because he gets everything back. But the real lesson is that he didn't have to get anything back at the end. He had already realized the truth. And the reward is no more than a kind of a sort of a child's version of what happens. But the truth is that you already have everything you're going to get in reaching the point of connection, in knowing that your steadfastness has brought you to, the gold that's tested in fire. And we've been there, and we're steadfastly done. Let's take this part away. Being steadfast brings you to the absolute truth. And I am Michael Lyons.
And I am Margaret, and thank you for listening.